morning has broken, and many thanks indeed for joining us on Morning Prime. Today is Thursday, the 5th of May 2022, and you bang on time for Sokoni, where we look at the economic outlook in the country and how also it's faring in the world as well. Already, I have my panelists with me here in studio. Up and Ali, we have Professor Geturo, who's the chair of the Kenya School of Government. Also, we have Professor Exen Iraki, who is the associate professor, Faculty of Business, University of Nairobi. We'll be joined much later by Kiprono Kitoni, who's the chair of Nairobi Securities Exchange, and also we'll be joined by Bill Okero, who is a businessman and a former senator of the National Assembly. And we'll train our focus today on what is happening, especially with the government not making good of its promise with the cost of electricity. Well, given it made good, of course, of the first tranche that we saw in January, but still, Kenyans are waiting with bated breath to see that cost of electricity going down. So the question is, what is truly happening right now, and why is the government remaining mealy-mouthed regarding this particular outcome? Because many Kenyans are suffering, as it were, with the cost of electricity. More than a month since the end of the first quarter, the ministry has been mum on the fate of this second tranche, with the consumers now wondering whether the promise made by President Uhuru Kenyatta was all but hot air. The Energy Ministry has in the past said it has been engaging with the independent power producers with the aim of renegotiating their contracts. But the ministry has been economical with information, such as the progress of the talks and whether the promise will become a reality before Uhuru exits office. The 30% cut, which was initially set at 33%, was the brainchild of the Presidential Task Force on the review of the power purchase agreements. Presidential Task Force on the review of power purchase agreements that, of course, was set up last year. The task force also recommended a raft of other reforms within the power sector, which it believed would lead to efficiencies and, in turn, a reduction in the power of cost by a third. The task force had in fact said a 33% cut could be done within 4 months of handing in the report in September. This means the cut ought to have happened by January. It is therefore concerned that 8 months after the task force handed its report to the president, consumers continue to wait for further reprieve. Kenyans deserve to know if the task force was being overambitious and just wanted to please the president, or whether the IPPs have refused to budge. We shall be probing that with our panelists this morning and remind the government that they have to make good of the promise on that particular cost reduction of electricity. And if not so, then what is the rhyme and reason behind it that 8 months down the line we're still waiting to see this cost of electricity going down? Good. Let's just buckle down now and see what is fresh off the press this morning, just to give you a quick cursory look at the dailies before you step out of the house and get informed on what is holding the headlines this morning. We begin with the bold paper, and this is what is holding the front page of the Standard today. The man set to be Ruto's deputy. This is none other than Kindiki Kithure, with slightly over a week remaining for presidential candidates to pick running mates. Tharaka Nithi Senator Kithure Kindiki emerges as a favorite to deputize Kenya Kwanza leader in a shortlist that also had Gachagua as a contender. You have the story on page 4 of the Standard today. Some of the things team considered, one there you have is loyalty, temperament, experience, acceptability, public records, Mount Kenya roots. That is some of the consideration that Kithure had to really pass muster. And just a brief history of his as well. There is Abraham Kithure Kindiki, was born in 1973 in Irunduni village, Tharaka Nithi County. A scholar with PhD in international law from the University of Pretoria and lecturer, Moi University, 1994 to 1998, represented Deputy President William Ruto at the International Criminal Court. elected Tharaka Nithi senator in 2013 and 2017, served as Senate Majority Leader and Deputy Speaker. Key architect of Jubilee coalition argument bringing together President Kenyatta and DP Ruto. Insiders say Kindiki and Ruto's relationship goes back 18 years. This is how it looks on the front page of a Standard. And still on the side with there, Azimio's big U-turn on running mate interviews. Now the 7-member panel to pick running mate for Raila now says it is not mandatory for candidates to appear before them, but offers chance for anyone wishing to be heard. This story on page 15 of the Standard. And JSC, judge in Sonko case to face tribunal. The fate of Justice Said Chitembwe lies in the hands of a tribunal to be appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta after the Judicial Service Commission recommended his suspension for gross misconduct. You have the story on page 20 of the Standard. Let's see on top there what the teaser has for us. And this is what you're waking up to as well. There is a government's new directive on school uniforms. And also, Rudisha from track to the ballot. You can find all about his story there. Also him trying his luck in politics at the end of the day. Remember, today is Thursday. Every Thursday you have the shipping and logistics pull-out magazine inside the Standard for you, and the real estate as well. Find out what is happening. Nairobi is brimming time to relocate the capital. That is what is there. Nairobi is brimming, and it's time to. Is it time to relocate the capital? That is what you have on the front page there of the real estate pull-out magazine inside the Standard this morning. All right, that's the Standard for you. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. In a bit, I'll ask my panelists just to tell us more about this particular grid that is there that Kindiki had to go through, the things they had to consider: loyalty, temperament, experience, acceptability, public record, Mount Kenya roots as well. Was that big on this particular consideration as well at the end of the day? That is the Standard for you. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Daily Nation. All right, it's all about the Deputy President. And the question is, did he talk himself out of a job? Who is this? Of course, you can see the chapfallen face there of Kalonzo Musyoka, Kalonzo's tough options. And it says, excuse me, as far as political options are concerned, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka finds himself between a rock and a hard place, frustrated in the deputy president hand. He can't officially quit Azimio and can scarcely wage a lone battle. His options are growing thinner and thinner, and you have the story on page 4 of the Daily Nation today. Suspicious push. A high-ranking Azimio official said yesterday that the party rank and file feared that the selection of Kalonzo Musyoka could lose the coalition votes, while other sources within the union told this newspaper that the push by both Ruto's and Musyoka's camp to have the Wiper leader named Odinga's running mate was suspicious. You have this story on the page 4. There's a plan B, and this is what Musula Kilonzo Jr. is saying on behalf of Wiper. Our plan B has always been for Kalonzo to run on his own. The rest is the usual political name calling. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. There's a splash. A sidebar tribunal to hear judge's graft case. High Court Judge Juma Chitembwe is one step away from being removed from office over alleged gross misconduct and misbehavior, although he says he's ready to prove his innocence. His employer, the Judicial Service Commission, yesterday announced that it has asked President Kenyatta to form a tribunal to investigate the judge. You have this story on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. That's how it looks this morning. On top there, also, World Health Organization is warning on obesity apps. Millions of people are piling on the weight from food delivered to them via mobile food delivery applications. And now experts want the industry to be regulated. You can read all the details on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's go full steam ahead and see what is on the front page of The Star. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of The Star this morning. Coming up shortly. And it's all about Raila and Mount Kenya. Raila's new Mount Kenya plan, or Raila's new Mount Kenya game plan. That is what we have as a splash there. Uhuru bedroom. ODM boasts leading charge against Ruto in Central. That is what the flagger is reading on top here. He's aggressively touring Ruto's perceived stronghold, and you have that story well fleshed out for you on page 4 and 5 of The Star this morning. And parents speak of pain, desperation in Form 1 admission, and you can see a related picture here, a new chapter, a parent escorting his son to the admission desk during Form 1 admission at Kisumu School yesterday. That story is tucked away on page 2 of The Star this morning. And looking at the side, but there is still a story of Judge Said Chitembwe, whose career is in limbo after JSC starts sacking process. Grounds for removal is the sub-headline there. The career of High Court Judge Said Juma Chitembwe is staring at an uncertain future after JSC yesterday recommended formation of a tribunal to investigate him over allegations of gross misconduct. Petitioners had last year moved to the Judicial Service Commission demanding the removal of a judge on claims he had taken a bribe to defeat the cause of justice. This story continues on page 2 of The Star this morning. And Azimio Umoja makes a U-turn on Raila's August running mate interviews. The 7-member panel to pick ODM leader Raila Odinga's running mate now says it's not mandatory for its coalition bigwigs to physically appear for interviews to get the job. In what appears to be responding to pressure from Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka and his brigade, the panel now says interviews will only be available for those wishing to give presentation before the team. And you can follow that story on page 7 of The Star this morning. There's this little girl with a very heart-wrenching story there. This is a girl's belly. It's a balloon in Kilifi, and the mom is seeking help for treatment. This is a tumor. You can follow the story on page 3, and if you're touched by that as well, you can find out all the details on page 3 of The Star to respond to this medical appeal. This is on the front page of The Star this morning. Let's move on swiftly and see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. And this is what you're waking up to the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Former MP, it says, gets 2 billion shillings in court fight with NBK. That is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Former MP gets 2 billion shillings in court fight with NBK. Appeal judges found that auction of 15,994.5 acres in Taita Taveta belonging to Basil Criticals in 2007 was undervalued. And the rest of the details is tucked on page 4 of the Business Daily. And Kenya's little-known farms earning billions is revealed. You can find all the revelation of these little-known farms on page 5 of the Business Daily today. Little-known Kenyan farms using technology to reach underserved markets have emerged as the fastest-growing businesses in Africa, according to a new report that ranks Nairobi as the 3rd largest home for the quickest expanding companies on the continent. That story, as I've mentioned, is on page 5 of the Business Daily. And you can see yesterday as well, it was a beehive of activity there. Students at Moi Girls High School during the Form 1 admission yesterday, this year, out of 179,192 candidates who sat the 2021 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exams, 171,265 were placed in secondary schools. The students started reporting to the respective schools nationwide yesterday. Now, NSSF board is in a row in new twist after who order. The Labour Ministry has shifted the responsibility of appointing a director of a National Social Security Fund nominated by the Workers' Union back to State House after President Uhuru Kenyatta issued an ultimatum over the hiring. Hiring, I should say. PS Peter Tum told a parliamentary committee yesterday that the ministry had forwarded a draft gazette notice on the appointment of head of public service Joseph Kinyua for direction. That story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. And Safaricom taps Citibank MD in buyout chase. You can read all the details also inside the Business Daily as well. Lastly, let's see what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo and also the East African. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of Taifa Leo this morning. It says Uhuru ajaribu mbinu mpya ya kumzima Ruto. Uhuru ajaribu mbinu mpya ya kumzima Ruto. And the flag reads there, wandani wa rais wafichua mikakati ambayo wamepanga ya kusambaratisha Ruto eneo la Mlima Kenya. All the details tucked away on page 2 of Taifa Leo, and the picture is still the same or related there about Form 1 admission on the front page of Taifa Leo as well. Those are your dailies. Briefly, I'll just show you also what we have on the editorial cartoons, and then we'll take this also with our panelists. If you're joining us this morning, at this moment, I have Professor Gituro Wanaina with me, who's the chair of the Kenya School of Government. Also, we do have Professor XN Iraki, who is Associate Professor, Faculty of Business, that is University of Nairobi. Also, we have Kiprono Kitone. Kiprono Kitone is chair of Nairobi Securities Exchange, and momentarily we'll be joined by Bilo Kero as well, who is a businessman and a former senator of Mandera, and also the chair of the Finance Committee in the Senate, that is the former Senate. Let's see what our editorial cartoonists have for us today to tickle our funny bones today and also to make us reflect as well. And this is what we have inside the Standard today. According to Gado, this is what is drawn for us. It's coming up shortly. And it's all about Raila and the running mate. I tell you, you'll have a belly full of this until now that is over. And this is Azimio la Umoja flag. And that flag, of course, being hoisted there by the principal, has a chameleon patched on it. Right? And I leave it for you to decipher that, but I'll cross over to Professor Gituro Wanaina, right? Looking at the dailies as well, beginning with the Standard, the man said to be Ruto's deputy. This is Kindiki. Giture is a scholar, I think, coming also from a fraternity as well. And also looking at this Azimio la Umoja with what we have a splash on the front page of the Daily Nation today. This is Gado's editorial cartoon today. What do you have to say?
I don't know about Gando. It's interesting because a chameleon is a very interesting animal. That it has many colors. And once upon a time, Nikao, the NPS, told me that government is like a chameleon. It's two animals. An elephant, very huge to move, but also a chameleon. Can change colors very quickly. I'm not sure whether changing colors has anything to do with the watermelon, but there could be something eating that flag of Azimio. So that's an interesting one from Gado. But I want to come to some of the things team considered. It's interesting that, curious about the last one, Mount Kenya routes.
This is in the Standard?
The Standard, you know, where they say that when Senator...
Could you have XN Iraki before you comment on that?
Still
the cartoon, yes.
I don't like that cartoon.
You don't like it?
Yeah.
Why?
It is first the person who is holding the flag. It makes me remember of some terrorists I've seen holding such flags. Number two is unlikely that you can hold a flag and have a chameleon on top. So to me that cartoon, if you interpret it deeper, it is in bad faith. But I get the message.
But why are you assuming that that particular flag, or maybe the material itself there, it's made of cloth or a fabric?
That makes it even worse. Can you imagine carrying a metallic flag? A flag is supposed to be made of cloth. It can throw in the wind. So imagine what will happen if the wind comes and that chameleon is thrown away. And the headline seems to be telling us that's what is going to happen. That eventually that chameleon, and I suspect who it is, will be thrown away.
Actually, if you relate it to the very terrible picture on the nation, you know, if you have to get a better picture for Kalonzo.
Oh, we will get there. We'll get there. Let me cross over to
the two. We
will get there too. Let me cross over to Kiprono Kitone. Good morning, Kitone. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes.
Well, the quarters are in the middle of the paper review as well, and so we have this editorial cartoon as well. And I know also in your position sometimes it can be very squeamish for you to comment on some of these things as well. But you now, the Kiprono, the person, of course, you've been following the politics of the day. What do you have to decipher?
Well, all I can say is we've seen a big escalation in the differences between the two leading political actors in this country, the president and the deputy president.
Yes.
There's obviously a fair amount of anxiety out there. But like everybody else, I would just hope that we do go into a peaceful electoral process. We have the IEBC in place. They have been issuing positive statements about their state of readiness. And I think for me, it's a moment of vindication to prove that our electoral systems and our democracy is maturing. Unlike many other people, you know, obviously in business, we would like to see stability. We would like to see the country move into a new dispensation with minimal economic disruption. Yes.
Indeed, indeed. And as we are heading towards the general election, and it's very pivotal, especially for the business environment at the end of the day. But looking also from your perspective as far as, you know, the stability or maybe the investor confidence is concerned with the general election looming, what are you reading from your tea leaves?
Now, the global economy is going through a major turbulence. I mean, oil prices are 37% higher than they were in the first quarter of this year previously. So obviously that has a direct inflationary impact on almost everything and almost all economies. I mean, we're seeing for the first time a 100% increase in farm agricultural inputs. That's obviously going to impact on productivity. As far as the market is concerned, the NSC, we've seen a decline in capitalization. We've had about 7% decline in the last quarter in market capitalization. We've seen a slight exit of foreign capital in the market. It's not surprising, it's not alarming, as some people have been trying to make it look like in social media. It's very common that investors globally would look at a market and assess their risks. So as we go into this electioneering season, obviously there will be a few who will exit. But then again, if you go to the bond market, you will find increased foreign participation. If you look at the recently floated Kenya mortgage refinanced bond, it was 400% oversubscribed. You look at the East African Breweries short-term note again at 11 billion shillings, that was very well subscribed, including even government bonds. So there's been increased activity around government bonds. But generally, I would say, you know, the market is starting to show signs of being impacted by global macroeconomic and political situations like the war between the Ukraine and Russia. So I think in the short term, it's going to be a very big challenge. I think next year is going to be a very difficult year because obviously, you know, we are an agro-based economy, and many farmers in the breadbasket counties of Kenya are going into the agricultural season with very, very constrained funding. I mean, if a bag of fertilizer today is 6,000 shillings, so many farmers have had to cut down on their applications, and that's going to impact on productivity and also impact on the supply-demand equation. And I think there'll be a lot of inflation in basic commodity prices next year.
Indeed, and of course, when we are talking about the stock markets being affected and just the general economic outlook globally, we have Coca-Cola as well, who they've suspended for now their IPO. They will have actually floated, but now that has been suspended at least for the next quarter to just weigh the situation in Ukraine as well. So these are some of the things that the world is smarting from that cannot really, go full steam ahead with their plans. They have to monitor also what is the situation with Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think it's a time that many economic actors will have to revise their own strategy, their own routes to markets. I think for me, what Kenya is going through is not unique to us. I mean, it's a lot of global dynamics are coming to play. So for me, the custodians of our economy, the Central Bank of Kenya, the National Treasury, the banking fraternity, all have to play their cards extremely well to see that we go through this turbulent season with minimal disruption to human life. But I think inevitably we are going to see a big challenge. I mean, at the same time, you remember we've got almost 1 million students being released into the job market annually with an absorption capacity of about 10%. So we are seeing a lot of situation where unemployment is likely to also balloon. And, that also brings me to the fact that a conversation we've had many times, that we need to look at the business environment and see what it is that we can do to nurture a stronger entrepreneurial culture to allow people to go out there and create employment. Professor Wainaina, who's sitting in here with us today, he was my lecturer in the university, and I remember when I told him when I was leaving university that I'd like to go out there and create employment, many people thought it was a tall order, but I think for me we need to start to think outside of the traditional 8 to 5 jobs that people are doing. And the COVID period has actually been able to turn the work environment upside down and create different opportunities. Over the weekend I was engaging with some young people in Kericho who are doing online jobs in the US. I mean, sitting in their houses in Kericho, and I was quite impressed because they're working in American hours. That means they're working overnight in country on jobs that are outside of this jurisdiction. So we need to think dynamically about how we are going to engage our youth so we don't end up with a very, very big, frustrated society.
All right, thank you very much. All right, back with the Standard, and the Editorial, we wanted to comment on the Standard as well before we buckle down to a discussion, especially looking at the cost of electricity and why it has not really gone down as the government promised 8 months down the line. You were commenting on the Standard. The man set to be Ruto's deputy.
Think, yeah. But let me say about Kip. I think thanks, Kip. Good to see you. And he's spot on. I think it's a very interesting discussion we had with Kiprono. We used to have tutorials at the university, and he said, "No, when I'm getting there and create opportunities," and he has done that. I think that thing he's bringing strongly, and I think it's a difficult time we are going. But I was really looking at the cartoon in the Standard, which my colleague says in Baptiste.
The Gado's cartoon.
Yes. And but as you look at, there's a very interesting message there. I want to wait. Which page is this cartoon now?
Page 17 there. Let me just flip over there quickly.
Page 17. Yep. But there's also a very, and I'll come to it, there's a very interesting thing by Anne Wamuratha, a statement that you might not having it. He says, "I deeply and sincerely apologize for the action and ask for forgiveness. If I would turn back the clock, I would distribute the cake differently." This was a lady who was throwing cakes to people like, so sad how kind of people we have. Now, I think in terms of the cartoon and then looking at what is in the nation, if you reflect the two, I was saying I would have probably got a better picture of Kalonzo there on the Daily Nation.
Okay, let me try and
it's like a man in distress. I think for the state, it has to be more kind at times,
But you have to get a picture that is depicting also, what the headlines is trying to reflect. Did he talk himself out of a job? So he has to wear that chapfallen face. So you see, they could have had a better picture than this.
There are two people you can't win argument, for the state and ABCD, so I'm not going to venture into that. Mm-hmm. But I think what the cartoon to me is saying is that, and I think as we get into this, I think this week or next week, to elect the running mates, need really to look at people perhaps who are progressive, telling somebody that is who are from Mount Kenya or her Mount Kenya route. I think that is here or not there. I think it's important for us to, as a country, to go beyond the roots in Mount Kenya. And as Kip has pointed out, I think as we get in 2023, which I see as a difficult year, it's actually in whether you have roots or there. It's somebody who probably have some program, what I call a blueprint, economic blueprint, socio-economic blueprint to turn this country around. What is there outside is not good at all. Yesterday, the Treasury in the US increased their interest by 0.5%. And they're saying that's the most they have ever done. 0.5%, to cushion what is happening in the global market. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a very telling point, that you have huge economy like this and reducing by 0.5%. But also interesting, XN, you see the percentage they increase with. So the people can have an opportunity to borrow, people opportunity to grow, to create wealth. And I think that's something as we get into the new government by August. How do we ensure we provide people with opportunity to borrow? That opportunity creates wealth. And he's interestingly, one day he told me, you have money in people's pockets, as we talked last week Friday. That's what the Kibaki regime did. It created opportunity for people, and there was money in the pocket. So looking at the cartoons, looking at this, and looking at the economy, I think let's concentrate more on the economy, perhaps. Who comes in is somebody as the deputy. Of course, the issue of loyalty, experience is important. But I think we are looking for a magician, if I wish to say that, somebody who will provide opportunity to turn the economy around. We are not doing well at all.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have there the cartoon there from also the Star. And this is all about the running mate. Azimio interview room, this is Kalonzo waiting, but also he's all in court there with Honorable Ruto, so to speak, as he's waiting for his interview. But we know now Azimio also have made a U-turn in regard to appearances before the interview panel. Are they buckling down? Are they buckling down under pressure? Ex-Iraqi.
I think one of the things I like from media is that if you drive around Nairobi, a lot of movie theaters have been closed. So it is good that the media is providing us with some entertainment, like cartoon. It's very good entertainment like that one there. I think the issue of picking a running mate is becoming more contentious, and there's a good reason. We have seen how President Uhuru and Deputy President have interacted for the last 10 years. So if you are going to get a running mate, you must consider 3 factors. One of them is how many votes is he or she going to bring to the table. That one you cannot dispute. Number 2 is how presidential is the person, because we're not talking about president now, we're talking about presidency. Yes. So the president and the running mate are tied at the hip, and that's why you found it's very hard for deputy president to leave. And number 3, I think from what we have seen in the last 10 years, the running mate must be somebody who is not going to threaten the president. He must be somebody who is subservient, somebody who will follow the rules, somebody who is not going to be seen as a threat. And I think that is the dilemma the 2 big parties are facing. Who does Raila Odinga pick as a running mate who is going to satisfy those 3 requirements? Bring votes, not a threat, and presidential. If you go to deputy president's party, it is the same problem. Who do we pick? So, and I think they are waiting for who is going to bring first. That if you pick that, I will decide who to pick. So we are going to be kept in suspicion for some time. About Kitone's argument about the economy, I think that's a very important observation, and my colleague here. I was very surprised to see that in Australia, in England, and in the US, the interests have gone up. And what they are trying to cool is the economy because of inflation. They want to tame inflation. But policymakers have this dilemma. If I raise the interest rates, I dump the economy. But inflation is seen now as a big threat because I think they overstimulated the economy during the COVID. People got a lot of money. So the economy is now overheating and the prices are going up. And I think what we should be asking is, what should we be doing in Kenya? Should we be raising interest rates or bringing them down? We are complaining about inflation, but we are complaining about joblessness. That's why I agree with my colleague that the next president from August should be a magician. And finally, I agree with my friend Kitone. I've never met him. I need to get a cup of tea from him. That I think we need to talk about job creators. Who is going to create jobs for the next generation? Who is going to create jobs for this country? It's not the government. It is you and me. And that's what we are supposed to do. Come up with good regulations. Make sure that people are encouraged, people are motivated to create jobs, and of course get rewarded for that. And I think the next president has that task at his hand.
Right, the next president has that task in his hand. I want just to also show you the final cartoon, then we buckle down to discussion, the cost of electricity and the high inflation rates as well. Also, the coffee sector is being sanitized and streamlined at the end of the day. This is what is in the People Daily today. So who's going to sit there first and who's going to edge out who? Without looking, how close am I? That is what Kalonzo is asking. And there are talks about also women as well. I don't want to be very graphic. It's early in the morning. But let me cross over to Bill Okero as well to just welcome him this morning. And also to where we'll still on our paper reviews this morning, just looking at the dailies as well, and these are the editorial cartoons as well. I don't know what do you decipher from this, Bill Okero and Kiprono Kitoni. It is self-explanatory, but of course also you can give us your views. Let's begin with Kiprono, then we go to Bilo.
Well, I think that cartoon is quite funny because it shows two. I presume the lady in the picture must be Martha Karua, and with Kalonzo Musyoka not knowing which of the two of them will be the Azimio La Umoja running mates. And I think, obviously, for me it looks like they're trying to portray, the anxiety that they must be going through. I mean, even if you look at the headline today in The Nation, it shows a very pensive Kalonzo Musyoka, not sure whether or not he will sit on that very elusive seat. So I think to me it's just a depiction of the two front runners for that ticket. Yes.
Yeah. Bill Okero.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's basically what it is. But if you are, if you want to be a bit more, you can look at the graphics. You would see the lady is more closer to the seat than the gentleman. But it's interesting that they give an impression that Kalonzo has no idea how close he is to getting that job. So he's really in the dark, asking, how close am I? He has no idea. But clearly,
so is a lady by the virtue of the circumference.
Correct. Clearly. I think whoever did this was more inclined towards the lady, taking the seat. I mean, it's not easy for you to beat her to that seat, the way that the graphics have been done.
Well, the Daily Nation has editorialized its splash this morning. It's asking, did he talk himself out of the job? And that is Kalonzo Musyoka, right? With all these media appearances and what we've been also hearing from the political operatives at the end of the day, did they really made much ado about this particular seat that now it's bringing this particular tension within Azimio? Milo?
No, I think to some extent you would think yes, but if I were in Azimio and the issue, as Professor said, is about numbers at the end of the day, really. All the other factors, are not critical. Well, the most important thing here is about winning. And if you're winning, you're looking at numbers. And there's little doubt that in all these candidates, even to those of us who are just, observers out there, not key players, Kalonzo would stand to bring more votes to that Azimio outfit than any other candidate, particularly in the context of what's happening in Mount Kenya. I mean, it's very hard to convince anyone that if you appoint a candidate from Mount Kenya, it would make any difference to the vote basket for the Azimio president. But I think there are many other factors probably that these players are looking at, beyond just numbers. And I think that is unfortunately, so this gentleman has, of course, been taken through, taken through a lot of mud. And I think all this, posturing, I think it's about either to try and someone is trying to placate himself that, look, I mean, you don't stand a chance because of ABCD, including what the headline, that story you've just mentioned is, you know, that you talked yourself out of the position. All this is an attempt to try and find, you know, a way around this gentleman. But I think probably they have reasons why they want to avoid him, although they also need his numbers. But let us see what happens.
Indeed. Thank you. All right. Let's hear from Professor Kituro, then we'll end up on that as well. Finally, with that editorial cartoon. We've talked a good game, and I think all of them today, they're pointed towards Kalonzo Musyoka. Finally, what's your comment? What do you decipher from this particular cartoon, if you may just
I think I probably pick what my colleagues are saying, but I think the bottom line is what Bill has pointed out. It's what is a person bringing on the table. The numbers are important for the political part of it, and because that gives you an opportunity to be in it. But secondly, and I think we need to look at what are you really bringing in terms of really looking at the economy. I think that's also important. But today, I think if I was in Kalonzo, I would probably be looking at all this and oh my God, what did I do for the state? Interesting that the opportunity from that, you can see, is more inclined to the lady. As Kiprono pointed out, it's more nearer to the lady is more nearer to the chair. But interesting that he also saying that without looking, you don't know how far he is. You know, that's also a contradiction, that you want to be the running mate, that you know how far you are. So,
thank you.
In my view, it's, yes, these are good, but I think I'm looking deeper things in terms of the next government. We probably know who will get into the presidency, but he needs to go deeper. As much as Iraqi is saying they need to bring the numbers, how am I going to change the narrative in terms of economic in this country? 7 years to the vision, 7 years to SDGs. A big uphill task.
Thank you. Thank you. Iraqi, you wanted to comment on it? Yes.
There's something we have all ignored on page 1 of the Daily Nation.
Page 1 of the Daily Nation?
Yes.
All right.
If you look at the bottom, the something says that, very interesting at the bottom, there's suspicion push. You've seen the suspicious push? They are saying somewhere that the push by both Ruto's and Musyoka's camp to have Wiper's leader named Odinga as running mate was suspicious. And I think I'm seeing some interesting interplay here, that the UDP section of the political wing seems to understand that if Kalonzo was made the running mate, there will be some interesting shifts in numbers. So to me, it seems that if Kalonzo became Raila's running mate, UDA would benefit from that.
UDA will benefit?
Yes, and that's why they are very ingeniously pushing for him to be Raila's running mate. Right.
It says suspicious push. A high-ranking Azimio official said yesterday that the party rank and file feared that the selection of Kalonzo Musyoka could lose the coalition votes, while other sources within the union told the Daily Nation that the push by both Ruto's and Musyoka's camp to have the Wiper leader named Odinga's running mate was suspicious.
We cannot ignore that fact.
All right, away with the politics now, buckle down to business. You're watching Sokoni, and today we want to turn our focus on the cost of electricity, because we know the government had promised to make good of that promise, to make good of that particular promise, where President Uhuru Kenyatta last year also established a task force, and the government should also make good of this promise to cut electricity by 30% to support households and individuals at this time when the cost of living has gone through the roof. To its credit, we should say, the Ministry of Energy implemented the first tranche of 15% reduction in January this year, offering some relief. But it cannot be lost that there was a promise to give Kenyans another 15% reduction by the end of the first quarter of this year. More than a month since the end of the first quarter, the ministry has been mum on the fate of this second tranche, with the consumers now wondering whether the promise made by President Uhuru Kenyatta was all but hot air. The Energy Ministry has in the past said it has been engaging with the independent power producers with the aim of renegotiating their contracts. But the ministry has been very economical with the information such as the progress of talks and whether the promise will become a reality before Uhuru exits the office. Now, the 30%, which was initially set at 33%, was the brainchild of the Presidential Task Force on the review of power purchases agreements. Presidential Task Force on the review of power purchase agreements that we saw established last year. The task force also recommended a raft of other reforms within the power sector, which it believed will lead to efficiencies and, in turn, a reduction in power costs by a third. And I just want to begin with you, Kiprono Kitoni, on this particular front as well, and looking at the cost of electricity. It is 8 months down the line, and we don't know. Of course, Ukraine and Russia war was not in the picture by then, but do you think there is any rhyme or reason why the government has not fully implemented what it had promised? Now we are heading towards the general election, and we don't know if the government will make good of this particular promise. They've been a bit mealy-mouthed so far, but Kenyans deserve to know what is happening, because the cost of electricity is still going through the roof.
I think, Debal, it will be fair to say that in the recent past there has been a slight decrease in the month-on-month cost of electricity. I mean, I have noticed it in the bills that I received that there was actually a reduction. That it wasn't the full amount that was promised, obviously, is an issue. But I feel strongly that, you know, in classical economics, they said that competition is a spur to efficiency. And, you know, Kenya Power has been an incredibly inefficient company. And Kenyans have really suffered a lot under Kenya Power. I mean, the accuracy of billing, the supply chain, supply issues, etc. I mean, it's been a really difficult time. But I think the task force has done a commendable job. I mean, obviously, they were taking on a very big elephant. And, you know, but we have seen some improvement in the recent past. But I do feel that in the future, they definitely need competition. We need to see more companies out there. This whole issue about inaccuracy of billing, Kenya Power coming to you afterwards and saying, oh, your bills were not correct, we have an additional assessment of your bill, disconnecting your power, taking it to a negotiating table. I mean, people in the enterprise have borne a lot of big burden out, under Kenya Power. And, you know, if you look at, for example, many of the commercial buildings and even residential apartments, almost 30% of the recurrent costs are just power costs. So really, it becomes almost untenable that you run those businesses on a profitable basis on the current terms that they are given, especially the cost of power. So for me, I think, yes, they have done something. They have had some improvements, but we are a long way to go. And I believe that the best way to deal with this problem is to bring in other companies to be able to vend power to the public.
So what is the wisest route maybe towards, to break away towards monopolization of Kenya Power?
I think we need to have a competitor. I mean, we need to have licensed and authorized competitors reselling power. I mean, we have, I think the way the energy sector is structured today, with generating companies like KenGen, and even the independent power producers, with, you know, Ketraco being the evacuator, and Kenya Power being the distributor, we need to have more resellers of power offering their services to the public, to enterprise, and obviously being able to compete with Kenya Power with better efficiencies and less legacy challenges like Kenya Power has got.
Right, and given that we have, you know, the crude, which is, you know, propelling this power sector and energy sector in the country as well, and what is happening currently with the Ukraine and the Russian war and the spike on the oil prices, there is a crude awakening that is a reality on the ground as well. Since we had this particular promise, how is the government also at a particular choking point right now to try and fulfill their promise, and also the specter of the rising cost of oil, the crude oil in the market? So are they really caught in between a rock and a hard place, Bilokero?
I think obviously the increase in the cost of fuel has thrown a spanner in the works in the but I think even well before that, I think for years, Kenya Power and Lighting, you know, electricity costs have been very high. And to a large extent, I think it's been, you have seen, it has been about inefficiencies and wastages and corruption within the institution, which resulted in an overhaul recently in the entire institution. But even then, you'd be surprised that a company that received or is receiving a government bailout has just posted a few months ago almost 4 billion shillings profit. You know, so I think, in my view, the biggest challenge has been what the task force highlighted, which is the cost of energy that they are buying from the IPPs. And I mean, we have got very efficient and cheap energy, geothermal and others, but it appears that because of political expediencies and political patronage, there's a lot of IPP energy, very expensive, almost, you know, it's nearly 100 or 200% more than the cost of the geothermal, which is being sold to power and lighting, and that's the cost that is being passed to us. And this is the main thing, this is the crux of this matter. Until the government realizes that people, the services, the industries are more important than the interests of a few IPP producers, then we'll continue having this challenge. And I think, you know, it's time we need a leader who can bite the bullet and say no. No IPP as long as we've got the hydropower and the geothermal adequacy. You know, when the weather is good like now, you know, there's no reason why we should go for IPP. And I think that's the challenge. But we have signed the dotted lines, and they seem to be stuck with it. But I think that is the reason why we are suffering. We are paying people. We are paying people for, you know, for something that we should not be doing. This is the challenge.
Well, don't you find it a bit interesting and raising eyebrows that there are a company that has been bailed out, and this is a huge swing on the pendulum from extreme ends of loss and profit making, that a few months after you've been bailed out, you're actually, you know, recording also high profits at the end of the day. Don't you find that a bit suspicious?
Yes, that's what I said. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And clearly, I think there are a lot of people who have pointed out that Kenya Power and Lighting Company, a monopoly that is charging tariff the way they want, and which is one of the most expensive suppliers of energy in the entire Eastern Central Africa. We probably have the most expensive cost of energy. The same company can purport to be, you know, to have gone under, and they have to be bailed out. And they, a few months later, in fact, just months after the government announced the bailout, you know, and you find them posting 4 billion shillings profit. So it's misplaced. You know, that bailout is completely misplaced. When especially there was a, you know, a complete overhaul that is going on, being conducted by the government in the entire management of the entity. So clearly, you know, there are institutions that companies, state corporations, that seem to enjoy certain benefits directly for one reason or the other, but it doesn't make sense, obviously. Yeah.
Well, Professor Iraki, it sounds to me like this is a case of, you know, the chaos theory at play. So you create chaos and create uncertainty, and you are bailed out to make good of, you know, the bailing out as well, and you make profit out of it at the end of the day, because this chaos was also deliberate. From your own assessment, do you read from, or do you hold the same view?
That's an interesting observation to make, because I think the last 1 year, this is the second time we are sitting in this studio to discuss about the cost of power in this country. And the energy sector in this country seems to defy the laws of economics. For example, if you drive around this country, you find out of geothermal wells coming up. You find out of wind turbines in Ngong and so on. You find the dams producing power. So using the rules of economics, crass economics, as Kitone put it, the cost of power in Kenya should be going down because there is more supply. The demand has not gone up substantially. So we'd expect by that simple fact the cost of power should be going down, but it's not going down. And that's a concern to industrialists, as he put it. It's a concern to me as a private consumer, because energy, like air, is something you cannot escape. And I think what should be asking is not just about chaos, not be just talking about chaos, but the reality on the ground. One of them is IPPs. It is true that IPPs charges a higher price for power than renewables and so on. But remember, those IPP contracts were long-term. Some of them as long as 20 years. And I think it's time we made them public so that we know the content. So I think our mixture of power sources is not balanced. I think we are more geared towards more cost resources, and that should be balanced. The question is, if you break the contract of those IPPs, who is going to pay for that? And number two is the taxes. when I look at my power bill, I always find something called fuel charge, something called the exchange rate. And I know Kenya Power is trying to protect itself against those fluctuations. But as a consumer, I should also be protected. So I think we should balance both ways. And number three, very important, is Kenya Power is a listed company. And I think the shareholders want their profit. So I don't know why you are complaining that after bailout, there was profit. Shareholders want their returns. But I think the long-term solution to the power problem in Kenya is what I've always demanded. Let's have competition. There's no monopolist who behaves well. So I don't understand why we cannot give Kenya Power competitors. If you look at the supply part, you have IPPs, you have KenGen, and you have independent and other producers who sell power through to Kenya Power, and then Kenya Power distributes. So why can't we have also competitors in distribution? So that if I want my power connected in my house, I must not go to Kenya Power, I can go to somebody else. Somebody might talk about economies of scale and so on, but I believe that the best solution is to have a competitor to Kenya Power. And then you see the power bills going down, you see efficiency going up, and you see manufacturers and private consumers like you benefiting from lower power costs.
Right. On that note, let's take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we continue with that and more stories as well, just teasing out what is happening in the energy sector. Why can't we go the renewable way, as it were? We are endowed in this country with the geothermal, of course, with hydro, as it were, but why are we navel-gazing on this one sector, and yet we can actually derive so much energy from wind power, solar power as well, the solar farms in the northern drift of the country, where we have a large geographical expanse as well. We take a short break right now, don't go. Where you're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime.